Hello, and welcome to The Beat. The Beat is brought to you today by livingmusicresource.com, partnership with the Gertrude C. Ford Center at the University of Mississippi in Oxford. We are leading a music research revolution. Our goal is to take the traditions of the musical past and bridge them with the resources of the 21st century. Why should we just read about living musicians? Why should we get our information simply secondhand? Why not get it right from the source? And that is what the Living Music Resource and today's Beat is going to do. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you think. We have a small audience here today. I'm hoping they're going to chime in a bunch. We want you to chime in wherever you're watching from, too. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am Nancy Mariah Balish, and I have the distinct pleasure of being an associate professor at the wonderful University of Mississippi. Here I get to be a teacher, I get to be a singer, I get to be an advocate for living composers, living musicians, and I get to have an opportunity to express myself. I'm a person who likes to think outside of the box, the good and the bad, but out of the box. So let me ask you a question. Let's say we were going to take Inside the Actor's Studio, Watch What Happens Live, and music, and bunch them together. Do you know what we would get? Do you know what we would get? The Beat! And here we are. Today's inaugural Beat is with a wonderful female composer, exceptionally talented and successful. Some highlights about Sara Graef are: her works have been performed in the United States, Canada, and the Czech Republic. She's had commissions, including one with the Tupelo Symphony Orchestra, one of my favorite pieces of hers called Cooling in the Peppermint Wind. She has music directed and composed for various film, theater, and television projects. Sara Graef was born in New York in 1971, same year as me. And she lived there until 1986, when she moved to Oklahoma with her family. She received degrees from Southern Methodist University and the University of Southern California. Right now, she is a professor at California State University in Los Angeles. A neat little tidbit about Sara is that she was a stranding coordinator for the Alaska Whale Foundation. I find that really intriguing, and hopefully we're going to talk to her about that in a moment. So do me a favor, let's give a big, warm Ole Miss welcome to Sara Graef. And it is just so great to have you here.
It is amazing to be here. This whole residency has been absolutely phenomenal. I'm so lucky to be here.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way. Sara's been here for a little bit. She has worked with our composition students. We premiered a piece, which we're going to talk a little bit about in a little while, last night, and just making her mark here, which is a distinct honor for us. I really mean that. I want you to know, through our website and our Facebook page, we have received questions from across the nation, which is very, very cool. And I want to remind again that anyone watching, wherever you are, we want to hear from you. So on the chat feature, please interject. It doesn't have to be a question. It can be a comment. We want this to be in the present, in the now. That's what we do as living performers. Why not with our research? You can also email if you're a little more, I don't know, traditional. I guess I'm more an email girl. livingmusicresource@gmail.com. If you're cutting edge and want to tweet, go for it. At LIVMUSRES. I think I did that right. At LivMuseRes. All right? So I want to start off with a question. I've talked enough. Okay. One of the questions that came in from Pennsylvania was, at what age did you start composing, and what was your first composition?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because I think I was actually about 10 years old when I started writing music, and I wrote a piece for my piano teacher, and it was called To Mrs. Honda. And she was wonderful. But the funny thing is that I have stacks and stacks of music that I wrote when I was really little, and then I kind of forgot about it. And then later, when I actually started composing as an adult, I found an article where I had been interviewed because I won an art contest when I was a little girl. And when they interviewed me in this article, they said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to be a music composer." Isn't that amazing?
That is so neat. Do you have the article up anywhere?
I should.
You should frame it. Put it up.
I should. I love
those moments where it's those little moments in your life that can seem insignificant, but they lay such great groundwork. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Or whether it's a little moment of something, whether it's an influence from someone, and then later in life it's just so exciting. I try to share that with my students. It's those moments that you don't think are important that are. That's really cool. Yeah. Very neat. A question from Ohio came in. Who were some of your earliest musical influences?
Well, that's an interesting question too, because the first thing that comes to mind is my mom, who was actually not a musician, but she was a huge music lover. And she really encouraged me to listen to music, to classical music, to Beethoven. She really loved Beethoven. My students know I'm a little nutty about Beethoven.
Well, why not? My middle son is nutty about Beethoven. It's his favorite. You put on like jazz, he's like, "Oh, jazz. I don't like jazz." That's me, Beethoven. So I understand.
Well, and so interestingly enough, then my dad was or is a huge jazz fan and musical theater fan, and so we had a closet. I remember we had a closet in the house that had a floor-to-ceiling revolving rack full of LPs, and he had speakers on the house that went to the backyard, and on the weekends he would play. We would get the most eclectic mix of music. Sometimes there would be Dave Brubeck, and sometimes there'd be a recording of the original cast of Kismet, and sometimes there would be mariachi music, and sometimes the Kingston Trio. So even though my parents weren't performing musicians, there was a huge love of music in the house when I was growing up.
So fun. That's prior to the playlists, prior to the what do you call it, the mixtapes. You had your own little thing going on there. I love that. I love it. And I should say, I love all of those styles of music. Unlike my middle child, I mean, good music is good music. That's the way I look at it.
I agree completely.
Let's talk about your compositional process. Someone from Mississippi asked, when composing, do you have a set time of day or a set place you feel most creative, or do you keep writing materials or a recorder on hand so when inspiration strikes, you're ready?
Good question. I'm a horrible night owl. I have a tendency to stay up very, very late at night, and I tend to work at night. And it's interesting because the theme of night tends to show up in a lot of the music that I write, where there are poems that are about night and themes about darkness, and there's something about the silence of the nighttime where I'm not distracted by everything that's going on in the outside world, and I focus more and become really creative after about 10 o'clock at night.
I love that. I think nowadays it's harder to find those quiet places with everything. I mean, I'm asking all of you to tweet and email and whatever, but it's harder, I think, nowadays to find those times of that silence and that stillness, and to be with oneself.
Yeah.
So nighttime.
And it's interesting too, because even when I go to a lot of artist retreats where I'll go for a couple of weeks or even a month or even 3 months to these places where they reserve time and space just for artists and their creative process. And in those places, I still tend to do the most work during the night because they're always in these really beautiful places, and I want to be outside all day long. So it's yeah.
Great. We have a question from someone in West Virginia. Is it easier to compose a body of work if you have a set group that you want to showcase?
Yes, definitely. I love parameters. Parameters are my best friend. And I love...
You sound like me. I like the rules.
It's really tough when you start a piece and you don't know what you're going to do. And so knowing who you're writing for, both personally and in terms of the instrumentation, is a really important area that helps me focus when I'm starting to write a piece.
Wonderful. So, yeah. Well, your music, for me, sparks the imagination. That would be a way for me to articulate that. I see very vivid imagery when I listen to your music. It doesn't matter what the piece is. And earlier I talked about Cooling in the Peppermint Wind. That piece for me, I see a movie in my head. And we at LMR thought it would be fun to get various age groups to listen to this piece. So we had preschoolers through 12th grade listen to the excerpt that's on your website, which I should say, we're not going to play the excerpt right now. I'm sorry, but go to Sara Graef's website and check it out. She has lots of listening examples on there of her music. Exquisite. You'll be on a wonderful journey. You'll be seeing amazing things as you're listening in your head. So we played this excerpt, and I had wonderful teachers on board, both in the state and out of the state. And I want to share first some of the consistent comments. Okay. I found these to be interesting. I'm curious to get your reaction. I have not shared these with her. So a lot of them didn't matter whether it was preschool or senior in high school. Christmas. They heard Christmas. Got a lot of Disney movie, a lot of movie soundtrack, a lot of African jungle, horses. And the key word was exciting. Now, if you need anything else to entice you to listen to this piece, I don't know. I don't know. What more could you ask for? I want to get a little more specific with some of the things because I think, you know, encouraging all people to embrace music, whatever type it is really important. And I said earlier, I like to be an advocate for living musicians, but an advocate for this idea of promoting music in whatever capacity. So played it for preschoolers. This one blew my mind. I like the trumpets, big and bold. It's really, really hot. Then the peppermints come. Then they get crushed, and it gets cool. It was snowing peppermints. Now, that group did know the title, so I just thought that was adorable. We had a 3rd grade class in Tupelo, Mississippi, and a child there said, it made me feel calm and in control. Another one said, it made me feel energized, which I thought was cute. 5th grade class in Pennsylvania. This one's a little bit outside of the box. We didn't go to a music teacher. This is a regular 5th grade teacher, and she decided to make it part of her science component. And she said it fit with what she was doing, which I thought was really cool. And she said the kids loved it. The first time she played it, she did not tell them the title. And she got their reactions. Then the second time, she gave them a peppermint to eat while they listened and got additional reactions. And she, like I said, tied this in with her science program. I don't know specifically how, but one of the children said, African music in the beginning. It makes me want to dance and tap, then a drum line. It's fiery music. Soothing music and mysterious. Another child said, fairies and waterfalls, Niagara Falls. And then a child after, while this child was eating the peppermint, I don't know how much of this was the peppermint in the mouth or hearing, was beginning happy, ending creepy. A lot of action, woo, ah. Happy, happy, happy. Creepy, creepy, creepy. You guys have to listen, okay? 8th grade piano class in Oxford. Like the musical feel and the different tones, instruments, good variety. Catches your attention, gets higher and lower. And then Oxford High School, we had 9th through 12th, and just a couple of these. It sounds like a composition for a Disney movie. There you go, got to tap into this. It has a very suspenseful feel to it. I love the louds and softs. It makes your mind roam. I love that. Because we need more moments, I think, especially with our young people, of allowing our minds to roam, taking the time to just, what am I thinking? Another one wrote, brilliant work. I really like the timpani, which brings all the instruments together. I love the accent notes. And then finally, and this sums me up, the student, a senior. It is a very powerful piece. It tells a story without words. And that, to me, is your writing. You are constantly telling a story. Now, me as a singer, of course, I'm used to words most of the time, hopefully the right words, but words. And I just, it truly amazes me when I listen to what you write. I get the most vivid picture, the most vivid story in my head. And it just was neat to hear what these kids had to say. We're talking 3-year-old through 12th grade. But the one question they all want to know, and we have to answer, is reason for the title. They want to know.
I can answer that.
Perfect.
So the title is actually drawn from a poem by Shel Silverstein. It comes from Where the Sidewalk Ends.
Oh my gosh, love that.
Who doesn't?
Exactly. Okay, go ahead.
And so the opening stanza of the poem is, there is a place where the sidewalk ends before the street begins. and there the grass grows cool and white, and there the sun burns crimson bright, and there the moonbird swirls in his flight to cool in the peppermint wind. I may have misquoted a word or two there.
You're taking me back to my childhood. That was a key component of my childhood. I needed to read more of that with my own children.
It's amazing. I mean, Shel Silverstein was amazing, and this poem, I loved this poem because it talks about that place that children can access and that adults tend to lose touch with. Right. That place where there's this amazing sense of creativity and belief and wonder. And so, and I actually titled the piece after it was written, which is kind of unusual for me. But it was because it had that kind of soaring melody with the trumpets over and the brass over the percussion, which was very, very active, you know. And so, and I had that feeling where the percussion was like that sidewalk, and then the moonbird soaring in flight, cooling in the peppermint wind. So.
Do you get what I'm saying about how she just creates this imagery? I mean, seriously, it's phenomenal. Well, let's take a moment. Do we have any questions in the audience that anyone would like? We've been talking so long, and I want this interaction. Anyone like to make a comment or a question? Don't be shy. Please, go for it. We have one in the back. You won't be able to see this person, but you're going to be able to hear a voice, a heavenly voice.
Do you find yourself choosing to write in certain styles of music, or do you just let the music come as it may and it kind of fits into the different categories, or do you specifically enter into composition choosing a style to write in?
That's a really good question too, because when I think of style, it's a huge topic. You know, it covers so many different elements of writing that starts with genre, starts with who am I writing for? Am I writing for a solo or a chamber ensemble or for an orchestra or for a choir? And then in terms of the actual musical style, once I've started that process, the style that I tend to lean towards, it's maybe this is a little too technical, but I really, what's most important to me as a composer is that I speak to the audience and that the audience has some sort of emotional reaction, and that reaction can be laughter, it can be cathartic, it can be anger, it can be anything, but I want it to have some sort of kind of visceral response for the people who are listening to it. And so sometimes that style I'll choose, I want it to be very lyrical and very gentle. Other times I want it to be much more vibrant and active. In the song cycle, each of the 5 songs was a completely different style, although hopefully motivically they were all linked to each other.
Perfect transition. So. That's the next thing on the list.
Okay.
So one of the other reasons Sara was here was to premiere a new work last night. She wrote a song cycle, thank you, for myself and 2 other faculty members here at Ole Miss, for Stacy Rogers on piano and John Schuslin on trumpet. And I'd love it if you'd share a little bit of the journey to this piece. The title of the piece is Stone, 5-movement work with 5 different poets. But I'd love for you to share with the folks who were not here just what was involved with Stone.
Well, first, this amazing couple asked me if I would write a piece for them.
I don't know what she's talking about.
And speaking of, you know, knowing who I'm writing for, I mean, there was a perfect example where I knew exactly who I was writing for, but then I said, well, yeah, I would love to write a piece for you. What would you like? And you said, anything. And I thought, oh, really?
Parameters,
give me parameters. And so that's what, you know, you shared a book of children's poetry with me. And so I spent a few months where I was really perusing a lot of poetry. I was reading anthologies, going to the library, reading my own collections, and marking off the poems that I really loved the most. But I still hadn't really settled on a topic that spoke to me until I went to an artist retreat, and I was in Taos, New Mexico, at the Wurlitzer Foundation for 3 months, and I met an artist there, a writer named Carol Sampson, who was with us here this week. And all the artists live in separate casitas, but once a week we would all gather and make dinner together, so we would have a chance to get to know each other. And it was at one of these dinners early on where Carol started telling us about how she had actually been a teacher at Columbine High School during the massacre in April of 1999. And of course, all of us just sat there going, you know, we were,
I want to tear right now.
Yeah, it was just dumbfounded. And, you know, and Carol, of course, is just absolutely amazing. When she speaks, every syllable she says is so interesting. And she told us how she had found a poem by Charles Simic called Stone. And she had used this poem as kind of an anthem to help her students recover and get through the emotional stress of this horrible, horrible tragedy. And she had actually gone and gotten stones for them so that each of them could actually physically have a stone, have something to hold on to. And I just was so amazed by her story, and I asked her if she would mind if I used that as the basis of this piece. And of course she said yes. And then I asked her if she would write a poem, and immediately she turned around within 24 hours, a draft of this amazing poem that's—
I love her poem.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It is. Actually, let's play. We're going to play a clip of Carol Sampson, who was with us last night. She's on her way back to Denver right now, but a recording of her reading the poem last night from the premiere.
Stones of Green and Rough and Blue by Carol Sampson. I gave each one a stone, mottled of gray and green and rough and blue, of green and rough and blue. A gathering of stones, a gathering, for each one a stone for each one. I gave each one a stone, letting each stone in time come to my hand, letting each stone come into my hand. A gathering, reaching without eyes, finding a stone mottled of gray and green and rough and blue. I gave each one a stone to keep, a stone to keep. Gave each one a stone because they knew. And gathering informs us all, and gathering informs. I gave each one a stone to keep, mottled of gray and green and rough and blue, because we knew. And when we knew, we wept. And when we wept in gathering, all wept, even the stones mottled of gray and green and rough and blue. Even the stones wept.
It's an amazing poem. The work itself, it's quite a journey as the performer, and I think based on the reactions from last night, I think it was quite a journey for the audience also. The question came after the concert last night, was posted, that Carol Sampson, before she read, spoke on finding her inner quiet and inner sanctuary to write her poem to include in the Stone Cycle. What is the sanctuary like for you in composing for Sampson's poem? And especially since it came from such a tragic place, did you have to go to a personal experience of grief in order to do that? This is one of our submitted questions.
You know, it's really interesting because it is difficult to work with such tragic subject matter, and my process was quite slow getting out of the starting gate with this because it is so personal and I felt so connected to it. And I think in terms of finding an inner sanctuary, it's that cathartic moment of letting that moment be translated into music and allowing myself to really just feel that, you know. And so there are times when I'm working and I'm composing, I'm at the piano or wherever I am, and just completely overcome by emotion. And while that's extraordinarily difficult and painful, at the same time, it's this amazing, wonderful feeling to feel something so strongly, and that's what that's what filters it into the music, and that's what makes the music possible.
And you did successfully channel that into that music. You really did. Really did. Let's just go and play a small clip from the song cycle. This is from the second movement, Message of the Rain, and we're going to play a little clip.
Well, very nice.
Well, I didn't mean that about myself. That sounded bad. Woo! I didn't mean that. Let me be clear. I really am humble, I swear. I need to be. Curious, what are the challenges you face when writing for The Voice? You can be specific or you can be general. I really mean generally. But
you know, writing for Voice is really fun. It's really wonderful, but it's not easy. And over the years, I've learned through various projects things that non-singers don't think about naturally. Non-singers don't think about what certain vowels sound like and certain registers.
Right.
And I've done more work trying to learn how lines will lie within the voice. You know, it's very important to talk to the individual singers that I'm writing for, but I've learned to sing when I write.
I love that.
And you know, the dogs in the neighborhood hate me now.
I'm sure not.
But it is really important because as horrible as I might sound, I know what it feels like in my body, and I need to know, oh, this moment feels so good, and then this moment feels absolutely horrible. I think I might choke, you know. And so I one of the best things I've learned is to actually use my own body as a guinea pig when I'm writing lines, you know, and then of course talking to as many singers as possible and asking for advice and learning why certain vowels, and, you know, and things like that.
Neat. So. Actually, this dovetails. We've been getting questions coming in. Thank you. And we have a question here that, have you ever written music for an instrument you were unfamiliar with? If so, how did you go about doing so? Because you said for singing you might do so, but do you experiment with every instrument you're possibly going to write for? You know, it's interesting. I mean, I think that's a great thing to do. I mean, for example, I love writing for harp. And of course, harp is a pretty complicated instrument to write for. So I took a semester class when I was a grad student at USC, which I absolutely loved every second of that. But, you know, so even though it was just a few weeks on harp, I learned some basic things about the mechanics of the instrument. And the more that you can play even just a little bit of each instrument, the more you can understand what you're actually asking people to do. But of course, that's not possible with everything. I wrote for accordion once. Oh, really?
And I absolutely loved it because the accordionist was brilliant and just so wonderful to work with and helpful. You know, but
that makes me think of that. Want to dance with that one,
right? Exactly. Well, it was, you know, we had a tango. It was part of it.
I love it.
So
check that out.
So yeah, I read about the instruments as much as possible, and then I talk to the players as much as possible. And
great.
Yeah.
Great. Another highlight from last night was hearing members of the Ole Miss concert singers singing one of your pieces, and under the direction of Don Trott. They were exquisite. I love the piece, but they blew my mind. And I would like to, you too. It was just,
yeah.
I'm so appreciative of Dr. Trott preparing them and for all of those students taking part in this experience. I'd like to play a clip of the choir from last night singing one of Sarah's pieces, That Music Always Round Us. So beautiful.
The choir was amazing. I was absolutely blown away. They were so beautiful. So
it's a beautiful piece too.
Thank you.
Lots of people are asking a question of something I want to talk about. Various people have asked, have you ever considered writing an opera or a musical? So I think this is a good segue to...
That's an excellent question. As a matter of fact, I have considered writing an opera.
Tell!
I have an opera that's in progress, and it's a project that's very close to my heart. It's definitely a labor of love. I started it a few years ago, and the backstory to the opera goes back to the whale work.
Yes, which was another question. Let me interject here. Another question that came in, someone wants to know, what are the duties of a stranding coordinator?
The duties of a stranding coordinator.
Sounds like something from a GNS.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Well, when I was working on the HMS Pinafore, I actually volunteered for the Alaska Whale Foundation for about a decade. I went up every summer for almost a decade and worked on a boat in Alaska and volunteering for a research organization.
Goodness.
And one of the things that we were trained to do was to disentangle large whales that had gotten caught in fishing gear. And so they were all scientists, everybody in the organization except me. And so it was kind of a natural role for me to fall into because it was a bit of an administrative job. But nonetheless, very hands-on, working out in the field with people who were actually working. We have special tools and go through special trainings with the government. So it's really amazing. And so I absolutely fell in love with Alaska. I fell in love with whales, mostly humpback whales we worked with. Bears, I love bears. But I also fell in love with the mythology of the Pacific Northwest. And I was really drawn to that and to the artwork and all of the different regional indigenous artwork and mythology was just amazing. And so I approached a colleague of mine who's an amazing playwright by the name of Jose Cruz Gonzalez. And he's phenomenal. He's an award-winning playwright. His works are performed all over the country. And I said, is there any chance you might be willing to collaborate with me? And he said, yes.
Wow.
And so we
can't hurt to ask, right? Always got to ask.
Absolutely. And he's fantastic. I absolutely adore him. And the libretto that he came up with is a myth. It's a myth based on whales about a woman and her daughter. And so it ultimately is about a mother and a daughter, but it's kind of told through the perspective of whales, and it's an incredible story. And so I started this project back in 2009, I think. And then it's been on hold for a little while because I've gotten actually some other commissions that have had to take precedence, but like I said, it's a labor of love, and I'm really looking forward to coming back to it and
making it happen. I can't wait to experience, hear it, see it when it comes to full fruition.
I will make sure.
And there's demand. People are asking.
Excellent. Excellent.
All right, we're going to deviate a bit. At LMR, we're interested in hot topics and sort of what's going on even outside of music. It just doesn't have to be one way. And I happen to be looking at a Glamour magazine. Don't do this all the time, but this month's Glamour magazine is great because it talks a lot about career and it talks a lot about sort of that next step for individuals. And it also interviews a female senator asking just how to lay that groundwork. And something I'm curious about, you being an established female successful musician, I'd like to know sort of your advice on laying that career groundwork and sort of taking those next steps, whether that is from undergrad to the next move, or it can be more general than that. But I want to tie it into what Glamour magazine's got going on this month.
Well, again, it's a huge topic and a very, very important topic. And I think something I mentioned last night, you are an excellent role model for this because you embody this idea of being absolutely fearless and being completely dedicated to a project and making making it happen and seeing it through. And if I were to talk about career advice for people at any stage, whether they're in high school or in college or grad school or afterwards, it's trying to let go of fear, trying to let go of insecurity, and really more than anything, it's about believing in what you're doing. And we all, especially in creative fields, you know, we all hit roadblocks, and we all have sometimes crippling self-doubt. And to be able to move beyond that and allow yourself to go forward, I think is the biggest step. And to be proactive, to talk to people, to not be afraid to make connections with people, not to be afraid to allow people to help you, because
that's a hard one. That's a really hard one.
It is. It's really hard. And I used to have this very misguided belief that I had to win everything anonymously. Everything I did had to be based on, like if I entered a composition competition, it was only valuable if I had to take my name off the score before I entered the competition. And what I've learned is that, you know, it's a big world out there. And if you don't allow the people who want to help you, there's a good chance that no matter how brilliant your work is, it may still never get away from the bottom of the pile.
It's true.
You know?
It's true.
So.
I promise you, I did not pay her to say that nice thing to me. I did not. That was unsolicited. And also tying it back to the Glamour magazine, there's a very good little article in here about not listening to the negativity. There really is. And you know, sometimes you pick up these magazines and it's wrong, but there's actually some good stuff in there, some content. So what do you like to do in your free time? I know some of the things, but what do you like to do?
Well, I love nature. I love to be outside. I love going to the desert, to the mountains, to the ocean. This is one of the things that makes me feel very lucky about living in California. You may have noticed I like photography.
Yes.
And I like to cook for other people. I don't like to cook for myself.
See, I love that about her, well, for many reasons, because then you get to enjoy what she's made. And by the way, on the website, we're going to post some of Sara's amazing recipes. But I think it's pretty neat. She creates, these musical wonders and shares them with everyone. She does the same thing in the kitchen. She creates these magnificent wonders and then shares them with other people. So it's just this running theme in your life. The photography. On her website, you have a page that's dedicated to the photographs you're taking. And you say it's a hobby. I look at these pictures and I'm in awe. They look professional to me. Actually, we're going to pull up some of them here. We're going to have a split screen and look. And I would love you to share a little bit about some of these photos if you wanted.
Sure.
They're working on it.
Okay.
They're going to be there in 1 minute.
Well, shall I talk while we
Well,
wait?
actually, how about I give you a question from a viewer? Is that all right?
Okay.
Question is, does your eye for photography ever influence how you compose? Do your photographs inspire your compositions?
It's a really nice question. I like that question. And it reminds me of something that I think about when I think about Carol Sampson. I remember at one point thinking, how does Carol have so many amazing stories? Because everything she says is this just phenomenal story, this phenomenal experience. And I started thinking about it and I thought it's because she pays attention. She sees the stories where so many of us would just walk right by and not notice. And I think that with the photography, that's what I hope to do is just pay attention and see the story when it's there. And so in terms of my eye for photography influencing my music, I think it's more of a correlation where I'm trying to find the story in the music the same way I try to find the story in the images. So.
Okay, I like that.
So this photo is the fluke of a humpback whale. This is up in Alaska, and you know, I was going to say one of the keys to having really great photos is to go to really incredible places.
Yeah, you have gone to some really incredible places in these pictures. I'm living vicariously through you. I've never been to Alaska. I think to inform my husband we're going.
Oh, this is a favorite of mine. This is a humpback whale that's breaching, and he's actually flipping backwards into the water, about to land there. And you can see all the birds swirling around and all the spray coming off his body as he's coming out of the water. This, of course, I mean, all of my whale pictures are up in Alaska, but this is in Taos. Oh, no, actually, this is Mount Shasta. I think this was taken when I was on a road trip several years ago, and I was driving past Mount Shasta, and I just saw the colors of this field and the mountain behind it, and it was so stunning.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
These are humpback whales that are actually lunging, and they're eating. And this is actually the reason for the Alaska Whale Foundation's existence, was that a researcher named Fred Sharp started going up to study this unique pattern of feeding that the humpback whales have in Southeast Alaska, where they're filter feeders, and most humpback whales, they eat krill, which are the little tiny crustaceans. But these humpback whales, there's a small core group of them that tend to come back to the same spot year after year after year. And they find schools of herring, which are fish. Right. And they will swim under these schools of herring, and one whale will start to call, and you'll hear the whale call this, oh, like this, and you can sometimes hear it actually above the water.
That is neat.
And when one whale calls, the others all suddenly just shoot to the surface of the water, and they come out of the water with their huge mouths just gaping open, scooping up all this fish and water, and then all the water comes back out. And this is a group of 3 whales doing that right there.
Oh my goodness. You talk about the experiences Carol has had. You have had these experiences, for heaven's sake. I mean, hearing you describe this, it's no wonder the imagery is so vivid in your writing.
Well,
really.
It's pretty exciting. I could talk about that for a long time. And that is at Yosemite. That's up in Tuolumne Meadows in the northern part of Yosemite. And that was on the same road trip, I think, where I took the photo of Shasta. And Tuolumne is a part of Yosemite that not as many people visit because it's closed off from November to May, because it's a plain that sits at about 9,000 feet elevation, and it's completely covered in snow from November to May, and there's no way to get there. So, and in the summertime, fewer people go. It's less accessible, but it's absolutely stunning. Beautiful
Wonderful.
Spot.
Well, I love your photographs, and I love on your site how you have one of your photos coordinated with a particular piece.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Thank you for putting those photos up. How do you keep balance in your life? I don't even know what that question means.
Yeah, I don't either.
It's fine. But I think we're all constantly trying to keep some sort of balance, but that could mean anything. Yeah. I'm just curious.
Well, I think it's interesting because my life is kind of compartmentalized a lot. I'm very busy as a professor at Cal State LA. I teach a lot of classes. I serve on a lot of committees. But the creative process and the art is a really important part of this. Traveling, I spend a lot of time traveling. I travel with my amazing fiance, who's the conductor of the symphony here in North Mississippi. And I think compartmentalizing is important, where I allow myself to be in the moment at that moment. So when I'm here, I'm trying not to think about the pile of final exams I still have to grade before tomorrow morning, and I have to, and I have to live each moment as it happens, and it makes life really incredible. And I have a very bad habit of filling up every moment with something, because the world is such an incredible place, and I hate to miss any of it. So.
I completely agree. And my new mantra that I hope will stay indefinitely is it's not what you have to do, it's what you get to do.
Absolutely.
I don't always successfully, I have my moments, but it's just to remember that, even those pile of papers, there's those phenomenal students that are behind the pile of papers, and I love your idea of trying to be in the moment. I think that's something I strive for too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I want to just have a little fun here.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you some quick questions. Just get inside the noggin, see what's going on in there. So don't think too hard.
Okay.
Just toss out an answer.
Okay.
You ready?
Okay.
Spotify or iTunes?
iTunes. I always pay for my money and pay for my music.
Kindle or actual book?
Book.
Hand wash or dishwash?
Dishwash.
Surprised! I'm okay with that. I'm just surprised. I'm dishwash. Everything goes in the dishwasher. Compose in the morning or night?
Night.
Night, we already know that. Spring, summer, winter, or fall?
Spring.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Guilty pleasure?
French fries.
Ooh. With ketchup or without? Or vinegar or salt?
Oh, with, cheese or gravy. Poutine.
Really guilty. Good,
Yeah.
good. Go. Pet peeve?
Mean people.
I like that. We need to just make them go away. In what period of history would you best belong?
1,000 years ago.
Okay. All right. Dogs or cats?
Both.
Comedy or tragedy?
Comedy.
If tomorrow the universe decided that you could no longer be an artist, what other career path would you choose?
I guess photographer is still an artist, isn't it? I would be a scientist.
Scientist.
Definitely.
Okie dokie. Favorite comfort food?
French fries.
I knew those two were going to be related. I don't know how, but I knew it. Seafood. I'm telling you, we're going to have some good recipes to share.
And not French fries.
They aren't French fries, no. If you were an animal, what kind of animal would you be?
A bear.
I love it. You would be a cute, cuddly bear for sure. Where in the world would you most like to live?
Perhaps just north of San Francisco.
Interesting. All right, I want to get some more of these questions that are coming in. Thank you. Is there a certain instrumentation that you prefer to write for? Solo or ensemble?
I love writing for very, very small ensembles and very large ensembles. I don't do as much of the medium-sized chamber ensembles, but I think there's something really magical about just a solo instrument or a solo voice. But I love orchestras. I played in orchestras.
That's something we haven't talked about. Sarah is an amazing flute player. And last night on the concert, she did one of her pieces, a solo flute piece, and it was beautiful. Talk a little bit about that, just sort of the playing of the flute to the composition. I mean, you said you wrote your first piece so young.
Well, I started flute lessons when I started piano lessons when I was 6, and I started flute lessons when I was 7. So I've done both instruments most of my life. Although with piano, I stopped taking lessons, which if I could go back in time, I would change that decision to stop taking piano lessons. But I played flute, and I was a flute major in college when I started, and then I added composition as a second major later on. And then when I went on to grad school, I studied just composition in grad school. But I loved playing in orchestra, and I think part of this was my mom's influence on me and listening to symphonies. She loved all the romantic composers, Rachmaninoff and Tchaikovsky and Beethoven, and to me there was never anything more amazing than actually getting to sit in an orchestra and play. So
there's nothing like singing with an orchestra either. There's nothing like it. It's the most amazing experience. Just the colors and the different sounds. It's just it's phenomenal. It's great. Let's see. Oh, I love this. This is from Hottie Toddy.
Which I know what that means.
Yes. Similar to what we just talked about, but when writing for chamber ensembles, how do you choose your instrumentation? Random or certain specifics?
It's usually based on a commission. It's usually based on an instrumentation that's given to me, which I actually love. And I've taken classes where I was given a certain list of instruments, and it would be kind of random. And I loved the challenge of just having to make that work. To me, that's one of the most fun parts of composing, is just being given limitations and trying to figure out the puzzle and make it really work.
Neat. Let's see here. On average, how long does it take you to complete a composition?
It depends. I think when the writing is going well, it goes quite fast, but sometimes I'll sit with a piece for a year, but it doesn't mean that I'm working on that same piece every day for a year. But I would say, on a daily basis, it depends on so much, on the length of the piece, the size of the ensemble. The third song in the song cycle, I wrote very, very quickly last night. That's just voice and trumpet. But the song cycle itself took me 2 years to complete. So, and we talked about some of the reasons why.
well, I want to take a moment. We're coming to sort of the end of our time together, and want to plug the Living Music resource. What I mean by that is, please join. Please make your voice be known. Let us know if there's a musician you would like us to showcase, you'd like us to interview. We are open to that. We're going to be meeting with people continuously. Our next beat is going to be on May 2nd from 3 to 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's a Friday. And it's going to be with Grammy Award-winning and Pulitzer Prize-winning composer William Bolcom and singer Joan Morris. And that'll happen again here. You can tune in the same way. For that live stream, we're actually going to ask folks to submit videos of themselves singing a Bolcom piece. So whether you yourself or you have students that you would like to submit, we're going to then, the LMR team is going to select 3 videos for Bolcom and Morris to give feedback on actually during the live stream. And again, this is free. This is costing you not a thing. I want to thank people. I want to thank Sara. I want to thank her with a little happy. I learned that now living in the South. We call them happies. And this is just a little picture commemorating your time here with us. We have pictures from Taos and pictures from Columbine, and we have the Lyceum and Ventris and, of course, LMR. And a picture of the artist from last night. I just want to share this with you and let you know you are appreciated and you're amazing.
Oh, this is beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I also have a lot of other people to thank. I would like to thank the University of Mississippi. And I want to say it truly is a great place to work. I'm going to get teary here. I've received so much support on this project, and I specifically want to thank Glenn Hopkins. I want to thank the late Charlie Gates, and my current chair. I'd also like to thank Matt Zerang. I'd like to thank Norm Easterbrook. I'd like to thank Faye Walter, Bruce, Max, the whole kit and caboodle here. How great to have an idea and to call a university webmaster and tell your little pea brain idea to, and him say, I think you're onto something. So I'd like to also thank Robbie Seitz. He said, go for it. And probably the biggest perk of being at a university is the students you get to work with. And I learn so much every day from the students here. And I first would like to introduce Heather Higginbotham, who is my intern with LMR. Come on up, Heather. Give me a hug. Amazing young lady, sophomore here at Ole Miss, who works diligently and has the best ideas. I'd also like to thank my LMR team. Come on up, LMR team. We have Claudia Salcedo, Megan Brock, Shalene Sugar, Carly Reeder, and Rachel Dennis. I want to thank these wonderful ladies. And I'm not opposed to having male folks helping us out. This looks a little, I don't know, unbalanced, but they're wonderful young people who, like I said, I'm learning from them every day in such wonderful ways. Remember, the Living Music resource will provide you with a journey to be part of a music research revolution. Take care.